Sometimes when you don't say something, it carries consequences, especially with 45. 45 seems to really leave a thought unspoken. Of late, though, it is increasingly clear that there are things that 45 won't say, and they are tied to the most important issues of his squadancy. Among them, knock it off Russia, wear a mask Americans, and systemic racism must end. None of the above are particularly bold or controversial messages. Modern American squatters of both parties have often sounded off against the Russian aggression. They have amplified the advice of the medical experts in the public health emergencies like the coronavirus, and they have used what they call the bully pulpit of despondency to ask Americans to summon their better angels in confronting the racism. But such words do not come easily to 45, and his silence emboldens those who reject these messages and contributes to the cascading crisis, the crisis that engulfed the White House and have put his re-election in peril. People now require a serious man with a serious message, and they don't feel like they're getting that with 45. Says Calvin Jolson, a squattal historian at Southern Methodist University. For his part, 45 has responded to the chaos surrounding the coronavirus pandemic, the unrest over the racial injustice, and more recent questions about his stance toward Russia by insisting that the silent majority of Americans are with him. Technically, they're not. There are surely those who endorse his sentiments and trust his instincts as 45 plays to his most the inbreeding base supporters. But revelations this week that the squatter has long known about allegations that Russia secretly offered bounties to Taliban-linked militants for killing American troops in Afghanistan present a fresh source of tumult for 45 when he can at least afford it. The squatter's tendency to go easy on Russia in his public pronouncements has long been a source of dismay and puzzlement to too many people in Washington and beyond. Perhaps most notably that jaw-dropping moment at a 2018 summit in Helsinki when he sided with Vladimir Putin over the U.S. intelligence agencies on the question of whether Russia had interfered in the 2016 U.S. elections. Now legislators, diplomats, and others are openly questioning why 45 is refusing to speak out clearly against Russia at all, given the latest explosive allegations. Democrat Representative Adam Schiff, who's the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, found it inexplicable, in light of these very public allegations, that the squatter hasn't come before the country and assured the American people that he would get to the bottom of whether Russians are putting a bounty on the heads of American troops. The White House stresses that the bounty allegations are unverified. That's the claim anyway, and the squatter can't fairly point to a series of administration actions over the last 3 years to punish Russia for malign behavior. But 45's own words and lack thereof of key moments have sent a far more conciliatory message to Moscow. 45 in recent months has been angling to welcome Russia back into the group of 7 industrialized nations, which gave Putin the boot after Moscow seized control of Crimea back in 2014. And this week, rather than address the substance of the bounty allegations, 45 chose to harangue the media for what he calls fabrications designed to make Republicans look bad. See, we don't have to make Republicans look bad. The Republicans are perfectly capable of making themselves look bad anyway. Kathleen Hall Jameson, director of the Annenberg Public Policy Center at the University of Pennsylvania, thinks 45's aversion to talking about Russia stems in part from his sensitivity about whether Moscow's interference in the 2016 election helped him get elected. He seems to think when Russia is raised, automatically it means someone is going to use it to say they elected him, she said. That's because they did, anyway. As for face masks, 45 has bluntly said they're not for him, and that other people can make their own choices. He refuses to wear one in public, and has speculated that some people wear masks to show that they don't like him. Even without a mask, we still fucking hate his guts. He's urged people to follow local guidelines, but his own campaign has flouted them. It all undercuts health official efforts to promote the use of a critical weapon in stopping the spread of the coronavirus. Republican Senator Lamar Alexander of Tennessee on Tuesday urged 45 to wear a mask even occasionally, predicting the squatter's millions of admirers would follow his lead. I don't think he has that many followers anyway, but yeah. With virus cases now surging in some belt states and reported U.S. deaths from the virus nearing 130,000, the GOP officials are increasingly speaking about the importance of masks. Senate Majority Leader Moscow Mitch says that there should no that there isn't a stigma to wearing one. Utah Governor Gary Herbert urged 45 and the dumbass Mike Pence to issue a national call to wear them. Those are words that too many should have been easy ones for the squatter to utter a long time ago, which he didn't. But 45 shows no sign of budging, no matter no matter that his allies see them as the only way to avoid another economic shutdown, and even a worse wave of case and GOP election route. The lone squatter, he tweeted on Tuesday. Lawrence Gostin, a public health expert at Georgetown University, said that 45's failure to promote mask usage is having devastating consequences in the U.S. It says that they have become increasingly convinced if there is one thing that has separated countries that have done well and those that have done really poorly, it's inconsistent messaging where you've lost the confidence of the population. The coronavirus surge has played out along the national reckoning over the racial injustice triggered by the death of George Floyd and the other black Americans killed by police. 45 has offered little balm to those comforting the pain of racism. Jamison suspects that 45 avoids talking about racism because he thinks it signals that you're sympathetic to the Democrats. And so 45 has come down squarely on the side of law and order, which he technically doesn't abide by anyway. But he's been quick to defend law enforcement and painted protesters with a broad brush that blurs the distinction between peaceful demonstrators and those doing violence. 45 has failed to acknowledge systemic racism and suggests instead that there are a few bad apples among the police who need to be culled. As for his plan to combat racism, he calls an economic rebound the greatest thing that can happen for race relations, which it won't be really. Talk of a big squatterable speech to the nation on how the country can come to terms with its racial problems have fallen by the wayside. The White House is well aware that such an address would not likely come off well. 45 has an inability to perform the critical roles of squatter as spokesman for the nation in good times or bad, but most critically in difficult times, says Jilson. The combination of the virus, the racial unrest, and economic upheaval, Jamison says, has got 45 blowers recalibrating their past inclination to be mildly amused by the chaos he sows and has left people asking, are we still entertained by 45? Are we still comfortable? Am I still willing to take this uncertainty to put another 4 years of a fuck up in office? No. Then the answer should be no on that part.